Welcome to week 4 of Jesus Live, an Easter time series of devotions and worship. This is also Thursday of our church's C2C week, Centerville Baptist to Community week. We are involved in several different local projects, practicing physical distancing, and also doing some other things to emphasize community in our church. If you'd like to find out more about that, you can go to our Facebook page, Centerville Baptist C2C. We begin by lighting the Christ candle. I'm grateful to have my son Eli with me here to play the cello in just a moment. And hear these words from John 20:1, beginning with verse 1 and skipping down to verse 14. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples. This was now the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the 3rd time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him the 3rd time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Three times Jesus asked Peter if he loves him. Jesus probes with his most vocal disciple Peter's faithfulness, Peter's commitment, Peter's love. A lot of folks connect this story to the story of Peter's denial of Jesus before Jesus went to the cross, because 3 times Peter denies being associated with Jesus. And I think that, for me, is a very significant interpretation, and I think that might be part of why Peter gets hurt when Jesus asked him the 3rd time, continues to probe, "Do you love me? Do you really love me?" But it's interesting. Instead of Jesus dwelling on Peter's mistake, instead of Jesus dwelling directly on the blame and the shame and the guilt of Peter's denial, Jesus takes a different tack with Peter. If you love me, Peter, if you really, really love me, then as you go forward, take care of my people. Take care of the vulnerable. Feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Don't dwell on the blame of the denial, but take responsibility for loving others. If you love God, if you love Jesus, love others. Take care of the vulnerable. And that's for us as well. What are we doing to feed God's sheep? What are we doing to tend to the vulnerable, to our fellow human beings. There's several ways that we can interpret this and apply this to our lives. One way is spreading good news, sharing words of encouragement and hope. Our C2C project of writing cards and sending cards to healthcare workers in a local hospice facility is one way of feeding sheep, tending the vulnerable, offering words of encouragement and hope. We can also feed God's sheep by acts of charity, by individual acts of kindness. When we donate food to a local food pantry through one of our C2C projects, when you make an individual act to care for someone who's hungry or sick or poor, giving money, giving food, then you are tending to their needs, tending to the vulnerable. One way that we can take care of Jesus' sheep is through sustainable acts of ministry and community development. Through our church garden that's been around for 3 years now, we have transformed a piece of our church community and a piece of our local community in a sustainable way that is going to take care of a piece of the food insecurities in the Chesapeake area on an ongoing basis. One way that we can feed Christ's sheep, take care of the vulnerable, is to speak up for justice, to advocate for social change. Once again, we hear of another story of a black man in Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery, brutally murdered by white supremacists. And people are speaking up for justice for him and change in our society against the racism and the white supremacy that cost him his life. Feed my sheep. Take care of the vulnerable. One way we can do it is by a lifestyle change. The best that I understand the science, the medical advice of this COVID crisis, my way of practicing taking care of the vulnerable is by doing my best to physically distance myself from others out in public right now. It's hard. It's demanding major changes on my life. But as I seek to apply Feed My Sheep to this circumstance, to take care of vulnerable people, as well as looking after my family, this is the way I interpret and apply it right now. Feed my sheep. This isn't about blame. This isn't about shame. This isn't about guilt. This is about taking responsibility to love as Christ loves us. If we believe that Jesus is alive and we want to live for him, what are ways that you can practice feeding his sheep? May God bless you, and may you continue to stay well.